Alrighty, everybody. It is time for episode 3 of the gigantic Phoenix guide that I will never complete because it's always evolving. But anyways, this episode is going to be more specifically going over all of Phoenix's abilities, all of the nuances that I found with it. And also, we're going to be exploring the Dota map a bit, because some abilities have some interesting nuances that I'd like to mention. Although I think while I'm here in like a somewhat reasonable Dota map, you might be noticing I'm actually in a demo type thing. I don't know how many people actually know how to get into a Dota map with the actual demo. So just for reference, if you go to Armory as an example, World, Terrain, you look at an item detail of a world, you can go to the demo. And what that does, it will load up a Dota map, and that Dota map will have the skin. But you basically just have a full working demo. Oh, something I'd like to talk about while we're here on like an actual Dota map is starting items, depending on which of the lanes that you're going in, if you're going off lane, mid lane, or safe lane. So, let's get started here. Now, my guide kind of focuses on being a core, and this is what I feel like a good core Phoenix build is. Get two branches. Not only is it for the damage, but you can also place it on the ground and consume it for tangos, which will give you some more regen over time. Main item you try to build for is a bracer, follow up with a Helm of Iron Will into a boot, and this is only really good if you're going into the mid lane. Well, I say you only go in the mid lane, but this is probably a fairly okay build to go in the off lane as well, if you're going to be playing as a core. And I will say, as for if you really need a bottle or not, most of the time when I play Phoenix, I don't personally feel like I need a bottle all that much. But if you think that you can rely on being able to secure runes very often, get in a bottle so that you can store the power runes for later, be my guest. I just haven't had the best of luck with timing that too well, although I'm not the best mid either. I just am really good at Phoenix mid. And for me, I feel like bottle's a bit too expensive to benefit from for whatever build I'm going, because I'd like to get to Boots of Travel as soon as possible while I'm in the mid lane. Okay, I'm talking too much about items. I need to wrap this up so I can start talking about abilities. So let's say you want to be a support. Obviously, Blink Dagger's not a good option, can't get that first, but kind of somewhat similar, going for the Tangos branches, mostly for survivability. I would recommend getting another set of Tangos, just for extra-ness. And I'll say you can take a Fairy Fire if you want, but I would recommend instead getting a Mango if you know that you're going to survive a lot in lane, because as time goes on, you're going to need that one Mango in order to cast your ability sometimes. So it might be nice to have one on standby if you're going to win your lane anyway. But if you're not sure if you're going to win, take a Fairy Fire and that'll protect you. You can just fairy out mangoes as needed. Be sure to get some wards and sentries. And try to put a sentry somewhere in like the inside of this box. That's a whole other thing I really shouldn't get into. Creep pulling and the ward wars in general. I don't think I should focus on that right now. But main items to go for, obviously, Tranquils, try to go for an Urn. Oh, that's another item that you should probably get, is a Ring of Protection, because that gives you a bit of extra armor. Reason, so armor is kind of interesting. As a example, when you start, you have like 9% physical resist, you don't want that. But if you even have just one Ring of Protection, you just boost it, you just doubled it, pretty much. And as the lane goes on, you'll probably get a little bit stronger, more stats maybe. It'll at least make you survive for a while. You don't have to build an urn, but it's like an easy build up. You can also go for Pavis. I found that as another option. Alright, that's enough about items. Time to actually talk about abilities. So, Icarus Dive. This is a really cool ability that, whenever you use it, makes you lunge forward and dive back in an arc. This arc is always the same, so it will always go towards the left and then to the right, or clockwise and then counterclockwise. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. This is very useful to note if you're fighting enemies that have big AoE spells that they just put on the ground. Just as an example, Faceless Void, due to his Chronosphere, you can this could be like an ally or enemy thing. You can just curve right around it if you're careful with it. And if you're not careful and you don't plan correctly which way you're going to just run into the bubble. And that's going to be painful for you. So, just plan where you're going to go with that. So, things to note with Dive. You can technically attack during it too. And from all of my years of playing Dota, I've only found one consistent use for the fact that you can attack during the dive, and it's whenever you're fighting a Juggernaut and he puts up a healing ward. This ward has one hit, so if you can see him actually recovering from it, here, you can attack with it. The actual attack amount is not a lot. You'll probably only get one if you're lucky, and so if you're going to go into a battle, and let's say the enemy has a blink. That might be nice to stop him from blinking around a lot. Well, luckily, whenever you do any sort of damage, it sets it on cooldown and it can't be used for a little bit. Now, most of Phoenix's abilities take a bit to activate, and if someone is fast enough, they can respond to it. So, if you're trying to go in, try to hit him with a auto attack as well, and that'll kind of delay the Blink Dagger use enough to help your team get on top of them. But main use that you'll ever find is when you're fighting Jug and you can just destroy the ward. There's not many other cases where this is useful. That is, unless you do this one specific trick. Okay. So, interesting quirk with the fact that Phoenix can attack during this. This also means he can capture outposts while he's diving. So, as an example, we're gonna dive to the outpost. We're channeling. Phoenix is way over here, but it successfully gets captured. This is a very interesting quirk, isn't it? It's even funnier when you get Phoenix to max level and you're like super far away from an enemy outpost. Oof. You can just capture it from so far away. This is like one trick that I do a lot just to kind of show off. So like, hey guys, I know Phoenix a lot, look at me, I'm gonna capture an outpost like instantly. It doesn't actually come into play a whole lot. It's more of just a really safe way to get the outpost, or even better, if you're like way in lane and you're trying to get into the enemy base, you can theoretically use the dive to get over to it really quick, give it a quick capture, and you don't have to make that long walk. Of course, main problem with this is that you're using your main mobility skill, which if you're not careful, Jug, don't die, thank you. Which if you're not careful will go on cooldown and you might need it later. So if you want to do that and you think it's dangerous, then you can do it. Oh, I remember a game. This was like years ago. But I remember there was this one axe that we were playing against. And basically, I did the trick where I would capture the outpost with Icarus Dive. And the axe thought, wait, are they smoked? That must mean there's like a ton of enemies here. Oof, God. Where is everybody? And then the outpost just gets captured out of nowhere. And then we're like, wait, shoot, axe is out of position. And then we killed him after that. That was a really funny interaction. One of which I have not had repeated ever again, but it was really funny. So, other stuff to note with Dive, you can use your items and abilities while you're diving, so you can cast Spirits as well. And only restriction, though, is that you can't cast Sunray during it, but you can cast Sunray first and then use Dive, which looks kind of odd, but I've had some times where I'm trying to catch someone. Let's say this Jug is trying to get away and he's too far away from the Sunray. Then I can just use Dive to boost myself forward. Or an even weirder situation, while you're using it, you could just use it to circle back around and shoot behind you. Item interactions, of course. You can cast stuff and it doesn't stop channeling. So with Meteor Hammer, you can just dive to a position, use Hammer. Need I say much more? And that's also why this build is kind of fun, where if you get a Yules and a Meteor Hammer, you can dive in, use Yules, and then immediately Meteor Hammer, and by the time that they land, they'll get instantly hit by it. Combo it up with Sunray as well to do some extra damage. Meteor Hammer has a slow built in, and if you get Shard for Phoenix extra slow, even better if you can get Hotspot. Oh, there goes my items. As you know, Hotspot does a tremendous amount of damage. Oh, look at them. They're slowed. It's hard for them to get away. You can use it. Yeah. This is also why Shiva's Guard is a really good item on Phoenix, because the actual Shiva's Guard blast range follows Phoenix around. So while you're diving around, you can just slow like twice as much in an area, or with the level 25 talent, you can also just cover up like a whole screen in a massive slow. It's a very good item for him. So, weird quirks with how Icarus Dive actually is stopped. So, as an example, if Phoenix is rooted while he's diving, it doesn't stop the dive. I don't know if this is going to be updated at some point, but even when rooted, he can't cast it anymore, but he can't... Can he actually stop it during that time? You can stop the dive during that time, but it doesn't stop the dive unless Phoenix says so. So that also goes for items like Glipnir that casts a root as well. That just doesn't stop it. Main ways to legitimately stop Sunray from actually working is to just stun him. Same thing goes if you have a Cyclone, or Silence is kind of the same problem, where even if Phoenix gets silenced, it doesn't stop the dive at all. However, this is where Silencer comes in. So, when you're fighting Silencer, he's got this Arcane Curse, which he places a debuff on you that whenever you cast a spell, it silences you. This also works for dive. So, I actually can't stop the dive during that time. I can activate it, just can't stop it. So, if you're ever fighting against a Silencer, it's best to go for a Yules as soon as possible, so that you can Yules yourself out of the dive. Otherwise, you're just gonna look ridiculous. Like, oh wow, look at him. Why did he die when he knew he would get silenced? I don't know, probably because I just really want to go away from things, maybe? Taunts are another thing that doesn't cancel the Phoenix dive. So, but he still gets taunted. Same thing goes for Wyvern's Winter's Curse, where even though you dive through it, it doesn't stop the dive. However, a couple taunts that actually do stop it is one from Legion Commander and Void Spirit. So if somehow Legion's able to... Oh no, that one doesn't count. I thought that one did. That's weird. Okay, for Void Spirit, I know this for sure. If Phoenix runs into the path of the Void Spirit Remnant, then he'll just get pulled into it and it cancels. Okay, now I'm curious. I'm guessing the Huskar one also doesn't work when he has Ags. We'll never know, he's too slow. I'm gonna guess the Huskar Ags taunt also doesn't stop it. So Void Spirits does, but almost no other taunt in the game does. That's weird. But basically, stuns in general will stop the dive. That's kind of all I need to say about that, really. So, warding. We like wards. We like putting down wards. These are really nice wards, huh? You know how normally you might try to go into a situation where, alright, I'm going to put down some vision and whatnot. All of a sudden you get attacked by, like, their mid or their offlaner or something. It's a really dangerous place for supports to try and ward. Well, that's where dive comes in handy. So instead of putting yourself in too much danger, same thing with the outpost, you can just dive to where you want to put a ward, and you can just put that there and return very safely. Of course, dewarding is a little bit of a pain, because even if you could put something over there, you'll have to get close enough to it in order to deward something. So it's not a, concrete solution, but it can help with scouting. let's say you're in a situation where you have no idea where the enemies are because fog of war. And, oh, there's at least a ward tower you can put on. Well, to at least help you out, you can plop one down really quick. You're far enough away from anyone that it's hard for them to capitalize on you even doing that. Of course, it's a different story if they have mobility skills, but you understand. There's also some tricky spots that you can put your wards in, specifically because you can do this dive. One of my favorite spots to put is on the Radiant topside area, because when you dive, you can potentially put a ward right on that cliff right there. But of course, there's trees in the way. Well, that's where this comes in. Or you can actually use the dive to clear out those trees really quickly. And of course, if you can angle it right, you can potentially take out even more trees while you're putting a ward on there. So while you're defending, you just get full vision of this area that enemies will probably be trying to camp out in, waiting to get into your high ground. Well, too bad, we have pure vision of it. Of course, if an enemy is over here and they're like, wait a second, we know that trick, Phoenix probably put a ward over there, and then they deward it. So, crap, now I just revealed a bunch of secrets. No one watches Phoenix guides unless they're a Phoenix main, so only us guys will ever know about this trick. Now this is a bit more difficult to do on the Dire side bottom lane, simply because the actual spot is probably over here. Even if you could try to get a ward out, there's still a lot of trees that you're going to have to take out in order to get that vision. So it's not as reliable as with this spot where the actual trees are just in a single line, whereas over here they're in a big clump. So it's not as reliable, and even then I still have that one tree that I'm missing, because even that one doesn't give all the vision. Now that I'm looking at it, hold on, how much vision does that one give? Oh yeah, there we go, we can actually see a whole lot more here. Still good ward spots, obviously, but I didn't even notice that tree wasn't there, so I'm not actually getting vision of where they are. Oh my. Okay, now I'm actually kind of curious. What is a really good position to do this? Even if you could take those out, there's just still going to be those clumps of trees. So you have to like do multiple dives, or just cut down all the trees here at all. That doesn't... Yeah, this spot just isn't as good as the Radiant topside spot. And of course in mid there's like no high ground to actually put any of this on. Of course there is this one ward spot here, but in order to actually reach that, you're going to have to get to your maximum level. Get all of your skills leveled up and whatnot. And then you can have just barely enough range to be outside of your base in order to put that ward over there. But enemies are probably going to be convening around this area, so it's not the best thing, and again, people can see you doing it, so you have to do it secretly and with discretion. Yeah, just be careful with it. There's probably a lot more spots that I could probably find, but you get the idea. Try to find some cliffs, and in the meantime of using dive to cut down trees, also plant down wards, if you can time it right. Okay, am I done with dive? What about some walls? There's some walls that are weird. Mars, outdoor, put up a wall. Alright. You can dive through the wall. You can't dive out. That's because of how the shields work. But I do find it interesting that you can actually, like, dive into it if you really want. I wouldn't recommend it, obviously, because you don't want to be here. Disruptor is another case of he's got a wall that he can put up. And you can also dive through that, and no problems going through it. Oh, forced movement. That's something else to mention. So, if you experienced forced movement at all, mainly what you'll probably be experiencing is Force Staff. This will cancel the dive prematurely. Also, happens if you use a Blink Dagger during the dive as well. It'll just cut the dive short. If you have a Manta style, or you interact with an illusion rune, it causes you to get shuffled around a bit, so when you pick it up, it also stops the dive. So showing that off with Manta style. There we go. This also happens with Harpoon, where it just cancels it. I kind of wish there was... I think there was a time when Phoenix could go a little bit further out before Harpoon takes effect, or... Yeah, I guess that doesn't happen anymore. So yeah, generally, most things that are not stuns will not stop the dive. Pretty much everything can't unless it specifically stuns them. So in the example of Mars, you can put that down, but you can pass through it, but because the shield guys keep stunning you, forcing you back, oh yeah, that's forced movement, which we already discussed stops it. So with Disruptor, even though you can put up a wall, people can't go through it very well, but Phoenix can just pass right through it because it's not technically forced movement. Okay, is that enough? I think that's enough for dive. Okay, on to other stuff. Fire Spirits, probably the easiest ability to understand out of all of these because there's not a lot of nuances with it. Because all you gotta do, throw out a spirit, all of a sudden enemies have their attack speed really slow, and it's going to be hard for them to actually attack you. That's kind of what Phoenix does a lot. That's kind of his main purpose. One downside with the Fire Spirits is that they move very slow. Now that was somewhat fast, but so we can see this Disruptor going over here. You're going to have to time where they're going and lead so that you can potentially hit them. Now this doesn't become a problem if you can time where they're going to be and have Icarus Dive run into them. And if you're quick, you can try and throw out a spirit, dive on top of them so that they get hit by a spirit, or as soon as you dive on top of them at all, land a spirit. As soon as you're right next to them, there's like no time for it to take to get there, so it's practically unavoidable. However, sometimes you don't want to be next to people, so you have to keep somewhat of a distance, and if you're quick, you can hit them. So in the case of a person trying to get attacked by a fire spirit, best way to avoid it, try to keep your distance, move around a lot, and keeping your movement jerky, so that it's going to be really difficult to land these actual spirits. I think from my experience, if a core that I'm fighting against in the lane gets a phase boot, then it almost becomes impossible to get, because you can just run away really quickly. However, let's say that you're in a lane, the best way that you can actually land your fire spirits is whenever your enemy isn't moving. When's a good time for them to not move? Oh, why? When they're trying to kill a creep. They're not moving? They might not be able to react fast enough to it. So if you as the Phoenix can tell that an enemy is about to go in for a last hit, try to throw out a spirit, because you're going to know where they're going to be to get that last hit in the first place. Last hit or deny, you get the idea. That is probably the best way to actually land them in the lane. It's hard for me to show this off because I have to control both characters. But while you're in a game, try to time whenever they're going to go for that last hit. It's really good against melee heroes for that reason, and you can potentially hit them a lot easier that way. When it comes to actual team fighting, benefits of Fire Spirits is that it does have a very long cast range. So if you can time where people are going to be, you can try to dive in and try to slow everything. Of course, it's going to be a little difficult to get everything, especially when they're all not clumped up. Let's say they're in this configuration, as an example. If you're quick, you can try to slow down everything, and when you slow down everything, it makes actually attacking Supernova really difficult, because again, attack speed slow is what it provides. So... oh, that's actually a really good spot as well. They can't see it. Oh. I'll go over that in the Supernova section. Something that I can't show right now in the demo is being able to stack camps. But as Phoenix, since you do have skills that have a very long cast range, it is very easy to stack multiple camps. I have had a time where on the dire side, jungle, you can Fire Spirit, throw, go over here, Fire Spirit, and potentially get a 4-stack, although the timing is very precise and I haven't gotten down to timing enough to get that consistently. Although most of the time I've ended up not stacking camps because I overthought it. So every minute is when it stacks. So trying to go for the, I think like the 54th second on most of these, you can try that out. I need to get the timing down a bit better. But once the 54th second comes around, try to throw out the spirits and time it. That's just going to take a lot of practice, and I need to actually practice that myself to potentially do it. But a safer way is probably just being able to stack both of these camps. Heck, even on the dire side, you can try and stack the small camp while you're at it. It's probably the easiest way for Phoenix to stack camps. In the case of Ancients, this is a ancient camp. There's no camps at the moment because apparently in demo they don't spawn. I even try like with creep waves on and they don't spawn, so whatever. But trying to get ancients to spawn, of course. You also have this other ancient camp on the other side. It's a bit of a long distance. Not many heroes can do that. Well, you can. You're Phoenix. You can dive over there, or throw a spirit, dive, throw another spirit, and you can potentially stack both of these ancient camps. Again, I don't know the exact timings of this. It's kind of down to gut feeling. Trying to do it at about the 40 or 54 second mark, maybe 55. It just takes a bit of timing. I need to spend some time and actually try to do that so that we can get more stacks. Oh, something that I guess should be mentioned every time Phoenix Fire Spirits is ever mentioned is the damage does not stack. Even if you throw a bazillion on there, they only get damaged by one instance, or it's more like there's only one damaging instance ever, and it has a max duration of 4 seconds. So every time that you apply it, it reapplies the duration or refreshes it to the 4 seconds. So best way to deal the damage that you want for Fire Spirits is wait 4 seconds, throw out another one, throw out another one. It is going to be hard to actually time that right, but luckily, with how Fire Spirit's damage is dealt, same with Icarus Dive and Sunray, it's all dealt in 1/10 of a second intervals. So that's how much that's how long it takes for each damage tick to happen. So if you end up applying one and then there's like about half a second left, you're not going to get too punished. There was a time before where it did like its damage per second on the second, and if you weren't careful, then you would basically miss out on like 100 damage, where now you just might miss out on like 10 or 20. Other stuff to note makes Phoenix a really good support is the Fire Spirits does provide a little area of vision. So what you can do, if you have a sentry that has its radius somewhere, you don't have to put down a ward to check it, you can just send up a spirit. It only stays up there long enough to apply one attack, so you're going to have to spend a spirit per attack to get up there. But that at least doesn't mean that you have to put a ward up here. Why don't you want to put a ward on the ward spot? Well, because everyone knows that's the ward spot. Everyone knows that. So they're going to put one there and deward it.
Yes.
So that being said, actually putting wards on the ward tower isn't the best sometimes. It might actually be better to put one way off on the side, because then in that case, the range of a sentry doesn't actually reach it. And that is kind of an odd spot for it to be, and that's kind of awkward for people to try and deward against it. So that might be a good spot. Oh gosh, I could go over like a whole video on good ward spots or like ward ethics in general. Do I want to do that? If I'm bored, maybe. You know, as weird as it is for me to say, as much as I play Phoenix, I learn a lot of Dota through Phoenix. So even though I don't play like almost any other hero, I know how all of them work because of how they work with Phoenix. Which is weird to say, but I know how the game works just because of that. It's not just heroes as well, it's items, item interactions, what makes a carry, a support, that kind of stuff. That could actually be interesting as a conversation topic, but that's for another video, if I ever feel like talking a lot. Alright. Sunray. The big line of damage. Your main damage source when it comes to your entire kit. So, Phoenix's Sunray deals a percentage of an enemy's max health as damage, as well as doing a little bit of base damage, but the main part is the percentage max health. Something that is mentioned, but I don't think people talk about a lot, is that the intensity of the damage from the beam increases per second. What that actually means is that the DPS at the start of the ability when you're casting it isn't as much as it starts to be as you go up. You can even see like the little numbers rising as the ability goes on, starting off at 28 and rising up to 50.
Killing spree.
Now some people might look at it and say, oh, so it does like an extra 1 damage per tick? That makes sense. Not really. I wish it was that simple. Since it is percentage based, if an enemy gets a bunch of health, you can see that the damage increase is much higher because it's going off of their maximum health as that damage. So, it's going to be very inconsistent how much damage Sunray actually deals. And also, because it is based off of their maximum health, it's not good against creeps, even if you're hitting a bunch of them, because they don't have a lot of health to begin with. You might not kill as many as you might want, especially in like the early levels, it's not as reliable. But later the game goes, it does get more effective because they have more health to deal damage, so you're technically doing more blah 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 blah. That's mostly to say, try to use Fire Spirits and Icarus Dive against creeps more often, just because it's a lot more static DPS. And then up against heroes or like big tanky guys, you can try to do more damage against them with Icarus Dive. So, kind of how I judge how much damage the actual ability of Icarus Dive deals is really based on like how much percentage of their health is dealt as damage. Mostly because that's the biggest deciding factor when fighting against things. Of course there is the base damage, but it's hard to calculate how much that base damage even matters. So I have these numbers here. The 11, 28, 45, 62% of target's health is damage, including base damage and before reductions. That is when I did a bunch of testing to figure out like how much damage can be dealt to somebody with just specific levels of Sunray, and that's about the approximate damage that you can deal. And most of the time, it's fairly correct. So like level 1 Sunray, wow, that's a lot of damage. Rank that up, get that to max level. It's at least notable amounts of damage. I will say though, if someone has something like a Pipe of Insight, all of a sudden a lot of the damage that could be dealt is decreased by a bit. It's still a lot, definitely, but I guess if the damage is really, really high, then it doesn't matter, but from games that I've had, Pipe of Insight kind of counters Phoenix just because it makes Sunray not do as much damage as normal. But of course, you can counter this by going for Spell Amp, because Spell Amp does work, making the percentage max health a bit higher. You can see right here, you can see the percentage change. But oddly enough, not the base damage, which I find a little odd. I don't know if the actual base damage is being affected, but it's hard to tell. Also, going off of the listed max damage is not reliable, because that's actually the base amount of max health damage that it does per second, and then it scales up. So, with 6.25% max health damage, if we multiply that by 6 seconds, that's the duration of Sunray, it should only do 37.5% of the enemy's max health as damage. However, with calculations, I ended up getting to 62%. How do I get these numbers? This is with our friendly buddy, the Target Dummy. And for testing, I end up getting a Elder Titan, have him out and about, get his natural order up and running, which makes his magic resistance 0, 10%. Oh, Pipe of Insight, 0%. So, this dummy has a tremendous amount of HP, which, I don't know how we can judge stuff off of that. Well, here's how. We look at the total damage that's dealt, 3,655. We take his base health. We take his base health of 5,682. So, 3,865, that's the dealt damage. Divide that by 5,682, And we end up with 68% of their health as damage, which is over the entire duration of the ability. Also note, I do not have the Max Sunray damage talent active. So this is just base Sunray. Does hotspot factor in? Okay, Dying Light, no hotspot. Level 4 Sunray, no talent, 0 magic resist. Three, 3, 6, 7 instead. 3, 3, 6, 7, divide that by 5, 6, 8, 2. That's 60% of their health is damage. 3, 3, 6, 7. Okay, so it's the same damage, so maybe it's actually 60% and not 62. How did I get to 62 then? I'm not sure how I actually got to 62. I might need to do some off-screen tests, because I don't think people want to sit through like every single test of me doing every single level. But you get the point. Normally, it would probably do like 36-40% of their max health as damage, but it got scaled up to almost 60% without extra stuff. So the scaling damage does actually happen. I kind of wish they had a tooltip here that says how much it increases by per second. That would be a nice addition, but oh well. Anyways, so since we did all of those tests, we can see what hotspot is like. So normally, does 60% of their health is damage. Oh, wait, maybe we should also test with the talent really quick. So with the talent, for 109, we get 72% of their health as damage, of which, over in my guide, is my note 76%. Did I do some tests wrong and I got different numbers, or did the numbers change? Because I swear these are like the exact same parameters. Well, whatever. It buffs the 60% of Sunray to 70% if you get the talent. So, that's all of that. What about hotspot? So this is without cast range, or extra cast range, max range of Sunray. We get 84% of their health as damage. And that was without the talent. Max range, Sunray, talent, hotspot. Oh my gosh. That is 106% of their maximum health. Okay, cool, whatever. Let's amp it up. Hotspot, cast range with talent. Ow. 125% of their health is damage. So, obviously, I don't think I need to do any further tests. If you go for a hotspot talent, you can do a tremendous amount of damage. Although, I will say, that is not accounting for magic resistance or a bazillion other factors, because I think it does increasingly more damage the more max health something has. So, in this case, whereas before, it did, like, 7,000 damage. This one it did like 5,000, which ended up being about 95% of their health. So I think the 95 actually lines up with what I've been seeing. Like once it's on the tip, even though they're... oh my gosh, it's hard to factor it because he also has like a lot of health regen. It's difficult to judge how much damage Sunray actually does. But just generally, if you go for hotspot, that actually just makes the damage insanely high. Whatever, we get it. Sunray does a lot of damage. Anything else you can tell us about it? Well, you gain access to a second ability called Toggle Movement, where you can toggle your movement. This movement key allows you to go over terrain, which is kind of nice, very handy, especially when... let's say you want to make a quick getaway. One option you can do is use it to go up cliffs. Same with going down cliffs. Because normally you can't go anywhere. You can also use dive for most of that, but Sunray is just another option. And Sunray has the same modifiers as Icarus Dive when it comes to using items, where there is no limit to what items you can't cast. But when it comes to forced movement, it's a little different. So you can use Blink Dagger, and it doesn't cancel the ray. You can use Force Staff, and it doesn't cancel the ray. You can even use your Teleport Scroll, and it doesn't cancel the TP. Doesn't cancel the TP, doesn't cancel the Sunray either. So, using this, one strat a lot of good Phoenixes would know, you can use this to leave the map, and go where no hero has ever gone before. And... wait, what? Wait, you can actually just leave the map now? Before it would just like teleport you back. I don't know if that's a demo mode thing or what, but that's interesting. So, a play that a lot of good Phoenixes will go is try to just leave the map and use the TP to get out. And that's just like an almost guaranteed escape. So, that's some use for that. Something else to note when it comes to toggle movement is that you cannot be slowed during that. So, as an example, Invoker's Ice Wall, you get super slow during it. Well, you activate the toggle movement, and you literally just can't get slowed during it. You are at a set move speed of... how much is it? I think it's 250 units a second. So even though that movement isn't very much, it is way better than 0. That's something to note. This works fairly well. Let's say Venomancer. His main thing is that he slows people down to a crawl. Well, not with the ability that you have. Oh wait, does that also work with Time Zone? Oh gosh, is this another thing for me to... ah, you are leashed during this time, so you actually can't move. Does it stop when casting? Hold on, does that also work with like Slark? Slark is another hero I know he has his Pounce, which can stop the actual movement. So does it stop it? Oh, it doesn't! Oh, well, they can't leave a they can't leave the range of the leash, but it doesn't stop them from moving. That is so weird. I swear, I want to make like a whole video on how weird Faceless Void's time zone ability is. Okay, more interactions. Getting rooted. That does stop it. Okay. Does it stop you from casting? Doesn't stop you from casting Sunray, but can't use toggle movement. Okay, so other things that actually stops Sunray from happening, it's mostly kind of the same as Icarus Dive, however, silences actually stop the dive. So as an example, Orchid, Sunray, silence. It actually stops it instead of Icarus Dive. Oh my gosh, that is so fast. As opposed to with Icarus Dive. There we go. Jeez, that is like impossible to catch, gracious. Oh, I just forgot about something. The going with the huge range increase here. Something happened in the 736 updates that caused the speed of Icarus Dive to have changed. Because before it was actually notably slow, where it would take like 2 seconds to get on one end, and is it one? No, I think it was like 1.5 seconds to get to the other end. But now it's like practically half a second, like twice the speed. Now, I don't know if... I think that's with the talent, because it's not with, like, normal dive. Like, that's the speed that it's always been. But if we get the talent... I guess it's the same time to get here, and that's why it's done that, but it's, like, so much faster now, and that's an undocumented change. I don't know why they didn't mention that. Anyways, taunts. So in the case of Axe... doesn't stop him from moving, but he can't do any actions during that time. So Phoenix can't move around or stop the movements while he's taunted by Axe. This also works with Winter Wyvern, kind of in the same department, can't do anything or attack. However, in the case of Legion Commander, in the case that she actually silences people when she casts her duel, then it actually cancels it. And of course, same logic goes to Void Spirit's little remnant here. Stops you from casting. There you go. So how with Dive works, so most abilities have like a projectile speed. You can use this to delay projectiles from hitting you. They will hit you eventually, but it gives you a bit of time. What else to talk about? Oh, I guess a quick check to make sure. So with how, you know how with like I mentioned how Icarus Dive can capture outposts, which is kind of weird. Can Sunray capture outposts? It can. A little less useful, but it can do that. Who else can attack while they're doing their movement skill? Does it work with Timbersaw? It does. Does it work with Pango as well? With like his Rolling Thunder? Oh, it does, okay. I'm pretty sure Storm doesn't though, because of how his thing works. Oh my god, he does. Oh wait, can Storm attack? Oh my god, he attacks during Ball Lightning? I didn't know that. Okay, enough talk about everyone else. Time to actually get to the last ability in Phoenix's kit, Supernova. So, what it does, it puts Phoenix inside of a little egg, and the egg deals a lot of damage in a huge area around him, totaling about 720 damage at max level, and it has a very large range, being about this distance. But for the most part, you basically deal damage to everything on your screen, which is really strong. And his Shard and Scepter effects both augment Supernova. Main one for Shard is it allows you to cast Sunray during this, which I've already kind of talked a little bit in depth about this in the episode 2, where I went over items and I went over Shard a lot. Where, basically going for Shard is like the main thing that Phoenix likes to go, but a huge weakness is getting stunned. Obviously getting stunned means you can't cast Sunray, it goes on a 30-second cooldown. Well, that's what Shard does to fix it, cause I can't stun him, and I can't stop him from casting the Death Ray that's hit So Supernova can be used as a protection method, simply because you cannot get attacked, or you cannot get affected by spells anymore. However, this is at a very notable cost to your ability to get destroyed really easily by attacks. This is, of course, giving you the weakness of getting killed by attacks, and if a bunch of people come in for attacking you, they can get you out pretty quickly. So of course, this is the main weakness that Phoenix has, is if he can get attacked a lot. And that is why you use your Fire Spirits to set up for that, because it slows their attack speed just enough to offer you a few extra seconds of survivability. And a lot of items that Phoenix goes, or can go I should say, such as Shiva's, that can give you an extra hit. I went in detail about this in the items video as well, where they kind of give you extra hits in general, just so you could potentially survive in that. Radiance is probably the best way to protect it, because it applies a second amount of evasion. And Phoenix doesn't have to be the one to go for Radiance, it could be anybody on his team. As long as there is a Radiance burn effect on somebody, they will be protecting the Supernova. And I'm pretty certain this video has gotten fairly long already, and I've already went into an insane amount of detail for his first 3 abilities. Supernova is an entire different beast, just because of the interactions that it has, not just with different items, but also different heroes in the game. Because different heroes have interesting upsides and downsides towards fighting Supernova. Most notable note is Night Stalker, mostly because his abilities rely on it being nighttime. And a thing about Phoenix is that his Supernova causes it to become daytime. So let's see, it's nighttime now. Night Stalker, he's like, I can't wait to stalk in the night. No, it's daytime. What? But it was nighttime not too long ago. I want to do things. No, you can't. But you get the idea with Night Stalker. It's very, very specific. But, like, I feel every single hero, in a way, interacts with Supernova differently. Not that everything is like, oh, I gotta relearn the entirety of the ability because something new just popped up. No, it's just some heroes have ways of just ignoring things. So in the case of Lifestealer, he can just infest somebody to avoid getting stunned by the big AoE. So, oh man, I'm gonna get attacked, he's gonna hide in someone. How do you get out? What's the keybind to get out of here as Lifestealer? Oh, whatever. Basically what I'm getting into is that there's a lot of very specific nuances. I just remembered another nuance with Sunray that I completely forgot to mention. Sunray does not affect ancient creeps. This is notably important when you're fighting against Warlock, because his main thing that he does is he summons a gigantic golem. And he has a ton of health, and it's very difficult to actually do any damage or kill him. He has a lot of health, carries can kill him easily. Sunray does no damage to him at all. If you're a Warlock, you can just plop one down and Phoenix can't do shit about it. His other abilities actually do damage to the Warlock Golem, but it's not going to be enough because it's not his 3,000 health pool. That's where Sunray comes in, but he doesn't get affected by it. Lone Druid is another example. His whole thing is that he has this bear guy, and the bear does a lot of damage. It is technically Oh, they changed that! Okay, never mind. I forgot they actually redid Lone Druid's bear a little bit, so now it's actually like a bit more of an actual hero. Brewmaster, there he is. This one I know for sure. He splits himself into a bunch of different lesser versions of himself. These are not affected at all by Sunray, which of course makes it difficult for Phoenix to do anything to him. However, in turn, the Brewlings are not heroes and therefore cannot attack the Supernova. So, even though Brew can't take damage from Phoenix, Phoenix can potentially not take damage from Brew. So that's an interesting thing to note. This also means that Phoenix can't do any damage to Roshan with Sunray. Now that actually would be kind of broken if you could do like a 10,000 damage to it. I really wish Sunray at least did some damage to Roshan, just like somewhat useful, but at that point you just might as well make it a static amount. Wait, hold on. Is he taking damage from Dying? He's not taking damage from Dying Light. What? Roshan doesn't get damaged by Dying Light? Huh? So wait, does that also mean that Demon doesn't take damage from it? It does! What? Brewlings also take damage from Dying Light. So wait, why doesn't Roshan take damage from Dying Light? Whatever. So when it comes to hero and item interactions with Supernova, as much as I'd like to talk about it, I've already talked about it at length in my previous videos, including my thoughts on Scepter. So if you want those, you're going to have to go to the other videos. I don't want to do it here. This video is already long enough. At the moment, I just want to talk about where to position yourself for Supernovas. And I mentioned earlier, geez, with that speed, it's hard to actually pinpoint where I should be. So kind of like what I mentioned earlier, positioning yourself on top of one of the ward pillars makes it very difficult. It's high ground. Enemies can't attack you when you're on high ground because they have a mischance. And you kind of have to make sure you're as much in the center as possible. This does, of course, require a bit of timing. You have to kind of predict where you're going to be and use Supernova immediately. This does, however, limit where you can put your Supernova if you want to only place it on high ground. Like, let's say a bunch of enemies are in this little area. So would it statistically be better to put the Supernova here? Because you're on high ground, they have to go up to go get you. Probably, but the issue is if they are in this location, they can just walk away in this direction. So, because this is on your side of the map, technically. So, it might also be nice to use Supernova to block their escape. But of course, they're going to be heading towards you anyway. So, is that what you want? Probably not. So, here? Actually, I think so, because I think that's technically low ground. Can you attack this? You cannot! Okay, that's a good spot, actually. That also means if you're trying to use that to block off their escape route, they're going to have to go in the other direction, which most of the time your team is going to be here anyway. So that can actually help them follow up on attacks. So, that is actually a good spot to go. Same thing if you're on the other team, and enemy, or your team is here, enemies are down there. You can try and go to that little island. I don't even know why that island's there, but it is. And you can use that to make their escape a lot more difficult. This, of course, requires you to be within range of it in order to get that to work, which also means you have to be kind of here, which is a little difficult to do. So, this is where having, say, a blink dagger comes in, or a force staff. This allows you to, right in the middle of a fight, reposition to where you want to be. So I wonder if one counter to heroes that have like a lot of attack speed could try to get a blink dagger so that you can position yourself on high ground easier. Well, okay, let's just think about where good places to Supernova would be. Let's say we want to get this tower, okay? High ground is nearby over here, but there's no high ground on this side, so enemies could easily retreat to the trees here, and it's very difficult to do anything about that. So, you might want to go in on this side and Supernova there. No, it's too far away. Or, one option you could do, if your team doesn't have good tree clearers, is just use Supernova to clear out trees to clear it out more for your team. That is one option. I guess that's something else to note, is just that you can't clear out a lot of trees with this. Oh, here's a good spot. So we're on top side. You can try to get towards the gate, and you can use that as high ground, potentially, but there's kind of no reason for people to retreat in that direction. Like, there's no reason for them to go that way. They're probably going to go away towards their lane, or off into the jungle in a different area. So, this kind of goes back to high ground spots as a way to protect the Supernova isn't reliable, because it relies on where you're fighting, basically. Looking over at bottom, you can try to, if the enemies are escaping in this direction, try to Supernova here so that if they are heading this way, they'll keep getting damaged. They can't seek refuge on that high ground because they'll get Supernova'd, but they could also just keep going in the other direction. Overall, it's difficult to use high ground as a way to position for the Nova. Of course, you can always try to just dive onto one of these pillars up here, but having that as a reliable way to protect it is just difficult. You're going to have to rely on items or your other heroes, or just really good positioning, figuring out where the enemy team is going to go in, I guess, 6 seconds. Or, okay, here's something else that I've thought about. So this is where I talk about psychology of or players in Dota. So whenever Supernova happens and people are like, oh, I have time to hit it, we're going to try and hit it. Oh, I can't hit it, I gotta run away. They're trying to figure out if they can destroy it in that amount of time. So, weirdly enough, the closer you position the Supernova, you can technically use it as a taunt, because it's saying, hey, I'm very weak and wide open, try to kill me. But of course, there's a good chance that they might not. Same thing on the other hand, if you have it further away, they know for a fact they can't get to it, so now it's a fear, and you can have them go away that way. So I mentioned you could probably use this as a taunt to say, hey, guys, don't worry, you can attack me. Oh, I can? That's pretty sweet. But then your actual taunt comes in and stops them from doing anything. And since everyone's so grouped together, they get hit by a Berserker's Call from Axe, Echo Slam from Earthshaker, Hoof Stomp from Centaur, Chronosphere from Faceless Void, or most devastating of all, Magnus Reverse Polarity. Ooh, it's deadly. I think in my next video, when I go over a bunch of hero interactions, I'm gonna talk about like the best way for people to play around Supernova, or how Phoenix plays around them if they're in their game. So I won't go into too much detail here, I'll get into it in that video. There's just a lot of interesting interactions when it comes to how you can use Supernova with and against specific heroes, but there's also a fair amount of bugs, of which most of have been fixed. However, there's still a good chunk of them that haven't been fixed, and are still a thing that goes on. Of which I am getting kind of running out of time to actually talk about, so I'm just gonna like randomly show about them and not really talk about them at all because they're really weird. I do have videos that are basically just showcases of these things as like some of my earlier videos from like years ago, and these are bugs that are still in the game but are way too difficult to pull off to even do anything with. But I'll try to go over them as much as I can, even ones that got removed maybe? No, not ones that got removed, but I'll definitely go over those interactions in that video. So, last thing is talking about facets, his passive, and talents, because I actually haven't gone over his talents yet. So, this is going to be the one place I'm ever going to talk about these things, because honestly, you kind of build for whatever you want. The only thing that really changes anything at all is the extra dive range, which is like the one talent that I mentioned the most. Although I will say his talents are like fairly balanced, although I'm not too big on the half-second duration Supernova stun, but there's still cases for it. Same with the 2 hits to Supernova, I'm not a fan of it, but it's still good in some situations. When it comes to level 10, you have a choice between dive damage or dive slow. Most of the time I would go for the slow, that is because of how Icarus Dive works. You can get to a 50% slow if you get the talent. This means that enemies just have a much harder time to run away. And that slow lasts for a pretty good chunk of time, which can help you set up for other abilities or have anyone else help with follow-up damage. But of course, if you go for the damage talent, it ups the Icarus Dive damage to be 100 per second, which if you combine that with Icarus Dive, can do a pretty hefty amount of damage as an initiation. Then you follow up with more spirits attacks and set them on fire as much as possible, finish them, you get the idea. Same thing goes for if you go for the fire spirits damage, where it makes the fire spirits do 100 DPS as well. There's just a lot of damage potential if you do that, as like an initiation, combo it up with your other abilities and items. No, I don't want to go too much into that. The 20 health regen talent. This is the highest regen talent that you can get in the game at such an early level, which is second to Bristleback's level 20 talent where he gets 25 health regen. I think it is ridiculous that Phoenix gets 20 health regen. However, it fixes a lot of problems with Phoenix, where he casts a bunch of his abilities. Oh wow, it cost a lot of health. Wouldn't it be nice to get that all back? Oh, ooh, a lot of health regen. Oh, I forgot to mention this in the item video, so I guess I'll put it here. So, armlet. There is actually a case for getting armlet on Phoenix, just because that allows you to be low on health so that Dying Light works. And armlet also gives you a bunch of extra health to lose, and you can technically do a lot. And if you go for this level 20 talent, you basically cancel out armlet's regen reduction, or the amount of damage that you take for it while it's active. As you can see, my health has not moved this entire conversation. The only time that this is of any worth is if you're going for Dying Light and trying to maximize its damage potential, so that you're trying to keep yourself fairly low to be able to do as much damage as possible to them with the Dying Light effect. But a problem that going for this armlet Dying Light build is that you're really low on health. So, please ignore this. I'll just say that this drow is a support that just so happens to have a 800 damage nuke. There we go. Okay, as I was saying, even though it is honestly really good to get yourself really low on health to be able to benefit from Dying Light more, since the change that happened to where the Dying Light damage has been decreased based on your health, it's not as damaging as it was before. You can get to like even with Armlet alone, you get like 90, even at max level. Of course, you can go for just more health items and you can do more damage. which that actually is a lot. Wow. So, would it be good to go for Heart of Tarrasque? I mean, kind of. You get more health, but you have to constantly be taking damage so that your health constantly gets reduced. Even if you have Armlet, it doesn't reduce it enough. So you have to kind of force yourself to be low. One other option could go for Ghost Scepter if you're up against like heroes with a lot of attacks. You can just not get hit. I should have probably mentioned this in the items video. I just literally forgot about it, so here I am mentioning it. However, just generally going for that talent just makes you more durable. You don't have to go with all of the time, or even just with the Dying Light, but having 20 health regen in general just makes you way more durable. Also, go for Boots of Bearings, go for some kind of armor type item. Shiva's, that's an armor item. Oh, that's a lot of health. Ooh, that's a lot of health. How durable is Phoenix now? I mean, not much, just still getting hit by a physical damage, but he applies some attack slows, and it might... Oh. Okay, so it might not be as crazy as I think it might be, but you get the idea. It does make you more durable, especially when you're up against like a lot of magic damage. You just recover from that a lot quicker. You can be a really difficult to kill bird. I just remembered, before 736, there was a time when the 20 health regen was a plus 500 health talent, which was the highest in the game at that time. But it didn't really help Phoenix, because since all of his abilities costed a lot of health to use, simply having more health just meant that he couldn't recover his health quick enough and he kept losing more of it. So for the actual gameplay effect of Phoenix, having that extra health regen as a talent, it helps him be just a generally good, more well-rounded hero. But I kind of miss the 500 health talent now because we can't benefit from Dying Light as much anymore. But whatever. So Supernova stun chance or max health Sunray damage? Almost always I go for the Sunray damage because, you know, Sunray deals damage, deals like more damage if you go for the talent. You can deal up to 70% of an enemy's health as damage, that's before reductions. So in actuality you end up doing like maybe 50%. Normally if you calculate for the amount of damage that Sunray does, you'll kind of get around 40%, and it's almost like a 10% increase per level in actuality. Maybe I should have mentioned that in the Supernova thing, where it's like a 10%, 20, 30, 40, and then 50. Okay, that kind of makes a bit more sense, but whatever. But why don't I go for the stun duration that often? This is because of a bit of a confusion part I have. Let's say the enemy destroys the Supernova. Almost did, gracious. Take two. Let's say that the enemy is just about to destroy the Supernova. Oh, and there we go. So now that extra stun duration that you had just doesn't matter anymore, simply because you're dead and you can't actually have the stun off. But most of the time you're going to be with your buddies, so you might have someone like an axe coming in, stopping them from attacking. Once that ends, there's going to be an extra stun. And of course, having them stun for an extra half second is really good, definitely. It just doesn't feel like it's worthwhile, because it only happens after the Supernova goes off, whereas with the Sunray talent, that's anytime you cast Sunray and it just does more damage. So the talent's just more consistent. The stun duration might be really, really good if the enemy team has a lot of BKBs though, and they're more than willing to fight underneath the Supernova. Oh, but also, let's say the enemy just leaves the range of the Supernova. Now whenever it does the stun, it doesn't stun anyone. So now there's kind of no point in having the extra stun duration. Blah blah, I just go for the dive damage just because it's more consistent. Now, choice between extra hit counts or dive range. For the same reason as the stun, it's a good effect to have an extra 2 hits. So, in the situation that I had before, you were supposed to survive it, Phoenix, not survive it. That's cringe. So that's why I don't normally go for the extra hit count, because it's just annoying. But, as an alternative, using all of your abilities in agglomeration, you can kind of do a lot of damage that way. And you can have a lot of extra hits. And look, I'm not saying that the +2 hit talent is the worst talent to go ever. It's just not enough for a level 25 talent. Whereas, with the extra dive range, you can initiate from way over here. And your range gets to be really, really far. What this actually allows you to open up to do, whereas before you could probably only reach to that staircase, but now you can go even further, far past it. What that could also mean is you can potentially set up the ability to get behind the enemy lines and probably cut off any escape route that they had before. So as an example, let's say here's like a well-fortified team. We got Axe in the front, or their tanks are in the front, supports or whatever. And you can only get to about the front, and they don't really care too much. They can kind of get ready to fight against that. Or you can get super far behind them, their escape route is cut off, and your team can initiate on them, and you just did a pincer attack with that extra range. There's just more options that you get with the extra dive range, as well as just like a longer escape or a longer initiate. There's a lot of benefits to go with the extra dive range, which is why I go that more often. So, I haven't in this video talked about Blinding Sun, nor talked about it much at all with how Phoenix works. Where, kind of basically, anytime that one of your abilities is on an enemy, they get a 2% mischance per second that it is being applied. And this duration is refreshed every time that they get affected by a new ability. And it keeps going up, and up, and up, and up. It just makes it more and more difficult for them to actually hit you, because more often than not, they're just gonna get missed. So, what you can do with this is whenever you initiate on someone, apply all of the mischance stuff to you. All of a sudden, with the full combo, you can do a bit over 40, 41 in this case for some reason. I'm not sure why. Things to note with how Blinding Sun works. Dying Light, the Dying Light facet, does not apply these blinding stacks. As you can see, they don't get applied. It's only the basic abilities, or basic ability with the ultimate. And nuanced thing that I found out in the last video with how BKB interacts with this. Say, do some attacking. You might notice that there was like a couple of aids in there. That was an extra 2 hits right there, even though they were affected by BKB. Now, I found this a little weird, that even though they were affected by Black King Bar, they still had the evasion happen. Well, I tested something out. I'm going to try to use like all of my skills on them. You're going to have a lot of mischance. None of the attacks missed there. At least one of them should have. However, when it comes to Supernova only, if Supernova is the only damage source, see that there was an evasion there? Oh, didn't survive, but there was an evade. So, what I think's going on here is, even though normally, while affected by BKB, that evasion doesn't happen, but it still does. And I was like, well, what the heck? But even still, when you apply like a bunch of effects on somebody, even though they're getting really blinded, it doesn't have an evasion. So theory is, the Supernova version of Blinding Sun actually pierces BKB. It is still purgeable, but it pierces, which makes sense for what the ability is, seeing as that it pierces. But it does say it can't be dispelled, but I think with Dying Light it can be dispelled because that's just kind of what it is. I'm pretty sure that's a bug, but if you're someone trying to fight a Phoenix, it might actually be beneficial to wait a moment and then use BKB so that all the mischance stacks go away so that you have a better chance of actually hitting. But of course that also means you're not attacking if you're not careful, blah 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 blah. So this could probably answer why sometimes, even though there's like no right for an evasion to actually occur, it happened right there at the end. This might be a reason why some people survive things, and they shouldn't. I'm pretty sure that is a bug, and I think I should get that reported, because I think that is an actual legitimate bug. So don't expect that aspect of it to be there for long, but the general mischance effect should still apply. So I think that's everything that I want to talk about with Supernova in terms of like positioning on the actual Dota map. There is a lot of other things that I've said, including like what my thoughts for Zevender are, and you're just gonna have to go to the other videos that I had earlier in episode 1 and 2, because I went into way too much detail on that. And I just don't generally feel like talking anymore about it, because this video is already like over an hour long, probably an hour 30 minutes, might be the longest one yet. Depends on my editing skills. But at least for this video, it has reached its end. And I think I'll have all that I want to say done in my next video, where I go over a bunch of hero interactions when they're allied or enemy. And before we end it, I'd like to really thank everyone who's interested in these guide type videos. I'm going to try and keep this somewhat updated every time there's a major update, and I'll just talk about stuff that's for the Dota mythos, but also kind of more specifically to Phoenix. I know not everybody cares about how Phoenix is played, all they need to know is to attack Supernova, that's all we need to know. But at least from my perspective, me learning Phoenix basically meant I needed to learn how every other hero worked. And because I needed to learn how every hero worked and interacted with Phoenix, I got to understand the Dota cast way more than I think the average person does. Does that mean that everybody should try to play Phoenix so that they can also learn everything about every hero? No, because I think Phoenix is a huge rabbit hole that I've been going down for several years, and I don't want to wish that on people. So, that's what these videos are for. Me just talking about everything that I found so that you all don't have to spend a whole decade to learn these things and instead an hour. That's the idea. So you all can have a lot more fun with this character than I have. And heck, maybe you guys might make some builds or do some plays that I've never seen before. I've seen a lot of cool stuff, despite the fact that I thought I've seen it all. But yeah, next video is just going to be interactions between Phoenix and heroes, allies, and enemies. That's probably going to come out in a couple days after this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, at least some amount, and you all have a good night.